Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Off-Farm Income Podcast. Thank you very much for joining us here on our YouTube channel for episode number 760. Well, hey, today we are speaking with John McLaughlin, who's coming to us from McLaughlin Farm LTD in Michigan. He's going to be talking to us about raising Highland cattle, selling at the farmer's market, and his business model. Really interesting profile of a grass-fed and grass-finished operation with a heritage breed. We're going to have that coming up for you right now. John, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for coming on today.
It's a pleasure.
All right. Well, how's Michigan treating you today?
Well, the weather here is near freezing. It's bouncing up and down. It's been rainy and muddy and not very pleasant at the moment.
That sounds like the winter we're having over in Idaho. I just was commenting this morning that sometimes people say Idaho's part of the Pacific Northwest, and these last few days it's felt like it. It's been nothing but rain and mud.
I prefer it to stay below freezing so we wouldn't be tearing up the fields when we feed the cattle and stuff. So.
I completely agree. Totally agree. And we always seem to be right on the borderline of freezing and thawing, and so it's hard to get out in the fields and do anything or even let the cows kind of glean that off during the winter because they just pug it all down. Well, John, tell us about you. Introduce yourself to our audience, if you will. Let us know who you are and what you do.
Well, we raise Highland cattle and Highland cross cattle. We're located in Jackson, Michigan, which is in the south central part of Michigan, about 40 miles west of Ann Arbor, where the University of Michigan is located, and about 40 miles due south from East Lansing, where Michigan State is. And so Jackson's on the I-94 corridor, which runs to Chicago and on out west. So I'm a lifelong resident of Jackson, and live in a farmhouse on a farm that was my grandparents'. They bought this farm during the Depression in 1932, and it was an operating dairy farm at that time, and there was a dairy here as well. The dairy moved when my grandparents bought the farm, and they ran it as a dairy farm until the early 50s. It wasn't their sole income, but then they liquidated all the animals, and then in the 60s they eliminated most of the buildings, primarily for maintenance and insurance reasons. It was just expensive.
Okay.
My wife and I bought the farm in 1980, and we started raising cattle here in conjunction with a career center, which in Michigan, most counties have a centralized trade type school that all the high schools in the area would send kids to for things like welding and auto shop and home ec and actually agriculture stuff. So and they're our neighbor. So for 12 to 15 years, we raised variety of breeds of cattle with them, often buying breeding stock from farms where some of the kids came from, at other times just because of breeds we wanted to try. So we had a number of different breeds, primarily Angus crosses, and Simmentals. We did have Hereford. Actually, we started with Herefords, but then after a while we parted company and then got into eventually Highlands because of our daughter, but she quickly got busy with high school things, and my wife and I took it up, and we called this a hobby that got out of control.
Okay. Well, you're being very humble. You've got a great website. I've looked all through it, and you've got great photos and really serving your customers very, very well with your website, and I'm sure in other ways as well. But if this is just a hobby, you guys are great hobbyists.
Well, it got beyond a hobby, but we are. It keeps us active. We're in the kind of retirement age bracket, and we've got grown children that live away, and we want the farm to stay productive. We don't want to turn it into a building development or something of that nature. Our neighbors happen to be this career center and the county organizing entity, which is called the Intermediate School District. So they've got an office just for themselves, and then they've got the school, which is this trade school. And then across the road from that, we've got a junior college, or it was a junior college. Now it's a 4-year college. They're all out here because the neighbor, who was an industrialist, my grandparents' age, donated his farm to the college.
Okay.
And so they moved out here in the late 60s, built a school, and some of the property then was taken. It was fairly complicated, but the trade school then located out here as well. So most of the land that this fellow donated is actually in the nature center, and that also surrounds us. So we're kind of in a little island. We get a lot of traffic because of these schools during the week. It's nice during holidays when we don't have that. But so it's not quite suburbia, but it's a little bit like that. So
things
good fences are essential.
Yeah. So it sounds like things are kind of encroaching in around you a little bit.
Well, we have some encroachment, but because of this nature center, then another neighbor has quite a bit of property. So we're sort of an island of non-developed area, but we get a lot of traffic of students driving from the city out to the college and that sort of thing. But otherwise, it's fairly quiet. So.
Well, it sounds like you're kind of equidistant between Michigan and Michigan State. Where do you guys fall in that rivalry?
Well, officially, my wife and we went to a liberal arts school here in Michigan, so we really aren't too interested in the rivalry, but our daughter did graduate from the University of Michigan, so and we pay taxes to both, so we've done farm markets in both cities, but now only do it in community that's adjacent to Michigan State. And that's been our main driver for beef sales since we amped up selling beef.
Oh, is that right?
Originally, when we were doing it with the career center, we didn't market that many animals, and it was mainly by word of mouth, and students' families might buy some, so there was never a concerted effort to sell beef. But when we started doing the Highlands and got more involved in the American Highland Cattle Association and the local regional association, we decided to focus on the beef side of the business as opposed to breeding stock side of the business. And showing, we don't really show, although I've got a bull that might be worthy of being shown by somebody this coming year, but we're not into that. We're more into the beef, and consequently, I'm on the beef marketing committee of the American Highland Association, and I was involved with the development and management of a program called Quality Highland Beef, which has some components of beef quality assurance in it, but it's a program, and the purpose of which is to get a producer to be more consistent in their production of their beef, and it doesn't require being grass-fed or not, but the producer can decide which they want to do, but it's got a consistency with and recommendations that they follow on processing and that sort of thing, the age and hanging weights and what have you. So.
All right. Now, the farm's name is McLaughlin Farm LTD. What does the LTD stand for?
We're a limited corporate. We're incorporated, and so we
Okay.
got limited liability. So the farm is, operated as a corporation.
Okay.
And so we have to meet those obligations and show profits sometimes.
Gotcha.
Which we tend to do. So
Well, that's good. That's a good thing.
That's a good thing.
Well, so tell me about the Highland cattle. I love the cattle. I've never ever raised them or spent really any time around them at all. What are the benefits of Highland cattle?
Well, Highlands they're good on grass, and they're a moderate size, so they fit into the profile that a lot of people are looking for these days with a smaller bodied animal.
Mm-hmm.
They've got great temperament. Those that don't should be turned into burger. We always tell our customers that temperament leads to tenderness, so having good-tempered animals is really important.
Mm-hmm.
And especially when you've got animals with horns, it's another good reason. And I think that the reason that most Highlands have that disposition is that in the early days, you just couldn't put up with animals. When you were living in close proximity to your animals, you just couldn't put up with them,
Sure.
Threatening your kids. So they really stressed it and bred for good temperament. The meat's a little bit finer grained, but another important feature is because of their hide is thicker than most cattle, and they have the longer hair. They don't need to put on as much back fat. So our association did a study through the University of Missouri a few years ago, and it's available on the American Highland Cattle Association's website. But it showed that high-quality Highland beef was leaner but as tender as any other premium beef, and that it basically shows that tenderness is not linked to fat. Okay. Tenderness is a trait, inheritable trait, and does not require a high level of fat to be tender. And so that's what we promote.
Okay.
And they are a heritage breed. They're thought to be the oldest domestic breed of cattle. So there's also the element of a distinct, type of cattle and genetics, which is valuable. Mm-hmm. Some people think because it's an older breed, it's helpful. You can't breed up Highland cattle in the American Highland Association or the Canadian Association or the Scottish Association. There are some associations around the world that do allow some breeding up, but it's not allowed.
Okay.
So the herd books have been kept pretty pure. So
interesting stuff. Now, how long does it take you to finish out a steer and have it ready for butcher?
Well, Highlands are a slow maturing animal, so generally it's going to take 24 to 30 months. Okay. And on grass, we're grass-fed, grass finished. Mm-hmm. So we tend to be closer to the 30 months. Now, a crossbred animal, we do all our crosses when we do them. We haven't done, the last couple of years have been Highland bulls, but when we do that, we tend to let the crossbred steers, we take them in on the same ages as we take in the full-blooded ones, but they're bigger. They're going to be bigger. You get the hybrid vigor from crossing them. And so we're close to 30 months usually with the purebred Highlands, and we generally are doing the same with the crossbreds, but they're going to have a higher hanging weight.
So what kind of hanging weights are you looking at after 30 months, either with the hybrid or with the purebred?
Well, our target is 1,100 pounds live weight.
Okay.
So, and the hanging weight on a purebred Highland's a little less than on a non-Highland due to the hide, the hair, and the horns.
Mm-hmm.
So you get a little bit of, but so they're around here for a while. The age does have a positive factor though, because the age of beef, the older the beef, the more flavor. Mm-hmm. So most commercial beef is 14 months of age, plus or minus. These animals are a good 10 to 16 months older than that.
Right.
So you're going to get more flavor. And then all of our beef is dry age for 14 to 21 days, depending on what the inspectors allow.
Mm-hmm.
In the heat of the summer, and if the coolers are open more, it may be 14 days. But this time of year, it's going to be the 3 weeks. And so you get a lot more flavor. People are always commenting that the beef tastes like what their grandparents had, or that sort of thing.
So with that, and in looking at your business model, when you've got that extra 10 to 16 months or whatever that extension is with raising this particular breed, then do you charge more for your beef to make up for that extra time and that extra winter that you've got in there?
Well, effectively, I guess we do. When people at the farm market say I can get my beef at the local grocery store a lot cheaper than this, I say, well, that's not the same product.
That's correct.
So, our product takes longer to produce,
mm-hmm.
therefore we command a higher price, and it's not for everybody.
Well,
yes, we do look at the pricing of grass-fed, grass-finished, dry-aged beef that's commercially available, like Whole Foods or places like that, which around here they aren't even offering that now. And we price our beef under that because we have other constraints, like we need to keep it moving.
Sure.
And that sort of thing. So, it's more expensive than what's usually advertised in the local, grocery store.
Well, I think what I'm asking you is like an apples to apples comparison. So another breed of beef that's grass-fed, grass-finished, just the same product that you're producing, but that beef is finished, say, in 18 months or 20 months. Are you charging more than those folks because of the extra time you've got into your particular breed? I'm sorry, that's what I intended to ask you.
Well, I guess we set our price fairly high, but we don't really compare to someone else in quite those terms. I mean, some, like at the farm market, there are other people that sell grass-fed, grass-finished beef,
mm-hmm.
and we don't even pay attention to what their pricing is. We set our price of what we feel is the fair price and what we need to get mm-hmm. for it, and we just go with it. We don't discount heavily. We don't do sales mm-hmm. At the farm market. We do various bundles, and the bundles may be discounted, and those are generally put together because something may be, accumulating. Or we always offer a little, what we would call a sampler bundle that would have 1 or 2 steaks, a roast, and ground beef for the people that are thinking they'd like to buy a quarter, that sort of thing. But we basically set our prices on what we need to get and not be too concerned about what others around us are doing.
Sure. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. I'm just always trying to figure out, there's a line out there where no matter if you're niched like you are or like I am, or if you're going on a commodity type basis, there's a line out there that's kind of a make or break. And so for me, I kind of understand my model for when I finish my beef and when I can get them to the butcher and to customers. And then with you've got a little bit of an extension on that. So it makes me go, well, how does that work? But I guess once you get it all up and running, then you've got a crop of beef every year. You're just the same as me. It's just that you've got them on your farm longer than I do.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Well, so tell me about your business model. You sell the bundles of beef and you're selling quarters. Is there any other way that you're marketing your beef?
Well, our primary customer development is through a farm market up in Okemos, Michigan, which is a suburb of East Lansing. Mm-hmm. And it's about 45 miles away from here. We picked that farm market because of the demographics. It's better demographics than Jackson, where we're located. Okay. There's customers looking for the grass-fed, grass-finished beef, and they're willing to pay premiums for components that, aren't offered in the grocery store primarily. Like, they want it local, they want it small production, they want it grass-fed, grass-finished, they want the dry age, they want it to come from pastures that aren't treated with herbicides and pesticides and that sort of thing. So that's what we offer, and we found that this market was really the best for us, and farm markets are time-consuming, and we'd done one in Ann Arbor where the University of Michigan's located, but it wasn't on the weekend. The market that runs on the weekends there is difficult to get into. It takes a long, like 5 years waiting list or something, and the market we did helped us generate a good customer list, but we just found that the time devoted to that was not worth it. So we do deliver orders to Ann Arbor, pre-ordered beef, and we have a number of customers in that area that buy quarters. Okay. So the farm market in Okemos runs from the first Saturday in May through the last Saturday of October, and it's every week on Saturdays. So our production cycle generally starts in April. We start processing to be ready for the first weekend in May, and then we run through into November because we deliver most of our quarters in large bundles in the fall, but we do deliver quarters and bundles in the spring and summer, just to keep our inventory in balance. Okay. Because once we get on processing is really tight in Michigan, especially USDA processing, and everything we do is USDA processed. So we have maximum flexibility. We can sell some to a restaurant. We can sell by the cut, which is required. In Michigan, to sell by the cut, there's not a Michigan inspection program. They deferred to the USDA a long time ago. So to sell to restaurants, to sell by the cut, to sell at farm markets, it's got to be USDA inspected. So that's what we do. And then once we get our inventory established, we will take names from people that want quarters sooner rather than later, and then we tell them there's not a definite time. We'll work them in, and they usually are fine with that. And so when we keep processing, we take in 2 a week every couple of weeks, and then we'll start delivering big bundles or quarters to those people just to keep everything in balance. Our processor used to be willing to rent extra freezer space, but then they jacked the price up so high that it really was not economic to use that. So they want you to get the beef out of there quickly. So this helps us just keep it moving, and so it's worked, and we are usually sold out every year. So eventually we get it out of someone's freezer and into the customer's hands.
Well, that's a good thing. John, I'm going to take a second to acknowledge a couple of our sponsors. Everybody, I'm going to be talking about Lacrosse Footwear. You can find them over at lacrossefootwear.com. Done right since 1897, Lacrosse Footwear has been making quality boots for hunting, working, and tending the land for over a century. And I will tell you, and you know, that everybody here on our farm in Idaho, we're wearing the Alpha range boots, and just constantly this time of year, that's all we're wearing, out in the mud and the snow and the freeze and the thaw and the rain and everything else. And we've got warm and dry and very, very comfortable feet with great traction. So you should try them out yourself. Please do check them out at lacrossefootwear.com. And everybody, also want to talk about Powder River livestock handling equipment. I've grown up around Powder River. So proud to have them as a sponsor. They make great squeeze chutes, runways, sweep tubs, calf tables, everything you need to handle your large livestock. We hope you'll check them out over at powderriver.com and let your local farm and ranch retailer know you'd like to have that green livestock handling equipment out in their yard, so you've got the opportunity to purchase that. All right, John, thanks for letting me get away with that really quick. I got to pay the bills every now and then.
Well, that's important.
It is important. Well, so I like your business. I think it's very, very interesting what you've done. Now, once you get started going on with the processing, how frequently are you processing cattle to keep up with the demand at the farmer's market and your other customer outlets?
We take 2 in about every 2 to 3 weeks.
Okay.
From April through about the end of October. Now sometimes there's things, life gets in the way sometimes.
Right.
And this year we postponed 2, and I'm waiting for the processor to call. They should be ready, and most of it's already sold. We do deliver orders to our Okemos customers in the off season, so we will tell them what's available, and they order, and then we deliver it usually on a Saturday. So what's not already committed from the 2 head that we're waiting on, we'll use for inventory. So it keeps going. Processing's difficult to get, and then it's difficult to change once you're in the processing cycle. We do enough with, we've processed 20 head plus for the last few years. Prior to that, when we were doing more commercial sales, we were up in the 50s, 50 to 60 head, but we've cut back a bit, and on purpose. And it's still difficult to make changes, but our processor, we've been with them for quite a while, and they will call other producers and ask if they'll change states with us and that sort of thing if we're in a pinch. But our kids live out of state. One actually lives overseas, so we do like to visit them occasionally, and so we postponed 2 this fall, and now we're doing those. But generally we're trying to be done and have the freezers shutting down by the end of November. So that's our plan. But
do you time your breeding to coincide with the need to take a couple in every couple weeks during the season, and do you try and keep them all uniform right at that same age when they do go in, or how does that work in terms of the spread over time and then the finishing age?
Well, most of ours are bred for a window from mid-April to the end of May.
Okay.
That's our prime time. Now, we tend to do some fall calving, but not very many. And those work out nicely to fill in the age gap. But generally, they're mostly the same age, and some are going to get processed, at a little bit younger age than the others. The bigger ones go first, and hopefully the smaller ones are catching up. But they may or may not. But they all go by 30 months because of the USDA 30-month rule on spinal column and stuff. So if they're small, they go anyway. By 30 months. We're not keeping them around any longer than that.
Okay. Now, I want to ask you about marketing and how you've done this. We mentioned before you've got a fantastic website, and I want to come back to that. Are you doing any marketing outside of being present at the farmer's market and word of mouth in your website?
Not really. over the years we've run ads in newspapers and classifieds and stuff, and that never really was very productive. So the farm market is the one avenue, and the other is the website. With the farm market, we maintain an email list of about 1,100 active recipients, and we have the list is divided between the Okemos customers, the Ann Arbor customers, outstate Michigan customers who are primarily people that probably found us on the internet, and then by quarters. Outstate customers, we used to ship. We don't do that anymore. But we do have customers that will either drive up to Michigan to get it or we'll drop it off if we're going somewhere. So we've got the list. During the farm market season, the Okemos customers get an email every week from us, and they're encouraged to forward it and that sort of thing. And the email look mirrors our website, so there's a common look, and when people at the farm market are interested and they get on our website, we have an iPad and they can just sign up right then and there. And when that happens, then they get a document automatically that discusses grass-fed, grass-finished beef and rotational grazing, and then it has how to cook grass-fed beef and a temperature chart and some recipe cards recipes. They can download them off our internet and print them out if they want also. So those are the two main things. We do little things like donate product for fundraisers and things of that nature. The farm market itself advertises, and they'll list all the vendors, and then they highlight vendors each week in their email blasts and stuff. And then they also do things like real-time pictures from the market they'll upload onto Instagram and Facebook during the market, stuff like that, and they'll feature, different vendors if you got interesting displays or whatever. So that's the extent of it. And as far as like flyers and things, we do not pass out much. We have a business card with information on the contact information of a typical business card on one side, and on the reverse side, one of our cards has what you would typically get in a quarter, the breakdown of the cuts, and another version has the benefits of grass-fed, grass-finished beef. We found that over the years that flyers cost money, and they're usually being picked up when the market breaks up. At the end of the day, they're all over the parking lot. So we just try to refer people to the website and give them that.
Now, you talked about the instructions for cooking grass-fed beef. I find that very interesting. Whenever I get a new customer, I always ask them, have you eaten grass-fed beef before? If they have not, I won't even sell to them until they'll go out and buy a grass-fed, grass-finished steak, cook it up, and eat it, because I don't want them to taste my grass-finished beef and then think that my beef somehow is bad because it's a different taste than they're used to. Is that kind of why you put those recipes and those instructions out?
Well, if people have a bad experience with a product, then they're not likely to go back to it. And grass-fed beef, overcooking grass-fed beef is, in our view anyway, is the most common reason people don't like it. They tend to overcook it. And we tell people, it's best eaten rare to medium rare. As long as it's still pink, you're good. But if we flat out tell people, if you like your meat well done, then you should probably go someplace else because you'd be wasting your money. And so we've got a temperature guide that we give everybody that buys meat, and it's printed on a heavy card stock, as are our recipe cards.
Okay.
And it's popular. People often ask, "Hey, can I get another recipe card? I want to give it to my son," or whatever. Okay. And once they actually start eating the beef a little bit more rare than they were accustomed to, they really enjoy it. And that's primarily for the steaks, because the roasts and things are it's going to be more like your typical beef. Mm-hmm. And our rib steaks have good marbling, but the concern is more the loin steak, your porterhouse and T-bone, or your sirloin steak, which they're more likely to ruin. One thing we do to help them a little bit with that is we have ours all cut it, and then the prime steaks are all cut 1.5 inches thick, mm-hmm. so that when they remember that we warned them, it's not too late.
Sure. Okay.
We also tell them to use a thermometer, not a clock, to cook their meat. And they get a good instant thermometer and test it and pull it off early. If it's too rare, put it back on, but you can't go backwards. So,
that's right.
Practice, and mm-hmm. even I get sidetracked cooking something and overcook it, or you realize you created an inferno somehow, and it happens to everybody. But
right.
So,
now, I want to ask you, for somebody out there listening who is thinking they would like to, they like your business model, they'd like to replicate it in whatever part of the country they're in. Are there any mistakes you made when you were starting out, or anything like that you could tell people about so they could avoid making them too, or any advice you might have for folks?
Well, we've been doing some webinars through our association. We just did one 2 nights ago, mm-hmm. And it's for going over all sorts of things. As far as mistakes go, I would say I don't know if we've made any huge mistakes, but I would just say the thing to do is go to if you wanted to do the farm markets in that avenue, you've got to start looking at the farm markets and to find one that's got the demographics you're looking for, the foot traffic you're looking. There's been a proliferation of farm markets in this part of the country anyway, and not all of them are going to generate the type of sales you're looking for. Now, meat producers are less common than the vegetables and the flowers and other people at these farm markets, but there are more today than there were 13 years ago when we started doing it. Mm-hmm. But some of these markets, they do pull away customers. And our experience has been that we lose customers to some other markets, not because there's a meat person at those markets, mm-hmm. but they get their other things there, and then it's less conducive for them to come to our market just to get beef.
Okay.
But so the right demographics, the reason we don't do the farm market in the town we're in is because of the demographics. And the market has huge fees and could not give you statistics on how many people were attending that market. Okay. And just with a visual observation of going there, you hardly saw anybody. And the fees were like 10 times higher than the market we're at.
Oh, wow.
It was like ridiculous. And so those are the types of things, but you can only study things so much, and eventually you have to go and start trying it out. So we did research for part of a season, and decided after doing that, let's do it. So we got geared up in the winter and started the next season at the 2 markets and then cut back to the 1.
Okay. Got it. Now, you mentioned earlier that you have formed an LLC. What led you to forming an LLC for your farm business and your meat business?
Well, we had the LLC before we were doing farm markets and this more retail stuff, but it was more from a liability point of view, just from animals getting loose or people getting hurt. We don't have we don't do a lot of production stuff ourselves. We don't have any employees. We hire contractors to do hay.
Okay.
I end up having to do a lot of work when we were putting it in the wrapper to do the baleage. But prior to that, we did lease out fields and stuff, and it was just from a liability point of view, wanting to isolate farming from personal and that sort of thing.
Okay.
So that was the main driver.
But
I would say farm markets require insurance too.
Okay.
And so you do need to be insured.
Uh-huh.
There are a lot of issues that people need to address when they're doing farm markets, but that could be a whole different podcast, I guess.
I think that's right. Actually, that's a great idea, by the way, to do that as an episode. So when you first got started out, when you and your wife, you decided to go out and get it going and try it out in some farmers markets after your research, from that point till today, have you added more products or different product offerings or services or anything like that? Has your business grown from that day in terms of what it offers to its customers?
Well, we've always offered, we say we've got more beef products with us. We've got, just to back up a second, when we first started, we worked out of the back of a pickup truck with 7-day coolers, but
okay.
After the first year or so, and going through days like in the high 90s and it's really hot, we thought this isn't great. Now, a lot of people still do that. There are people at our market that they just work out of coolers, but we thought if we're going to be a high-end beef producer, we don't want people to be concerned, about the meat and if it's, thawing out in those coolers or what. So we have a 17-foot aluminum enclosed utility trailer with 2 big 26 cubic foot freezers in it.
Okay.
It's actually licensed in Michigan as part of our freezer warehouse, quote unquote. And so we work out of this trailer, and so we got almost all the cuts you can imagine, and we have customers that ask for instance, Korean short ribs, so we might have those cut instead of standard short ribs. We've got organ meat. We've got lots of bones. We do produce, our processor does this for us because we're not licensed, but they will make all beef sausage, which is a value-added product that we've developed. And there's no MSG, there's no nitrates, there's no fillers for people with allergies. So we did try getting people to produce pork for us. We weren't in a position where we really wanted to, like a Joel South and create all these other products like chicken and pork and that sort of thing. We didn't want to get into that. Pork was very popular, but our producer was an Amish fella, and it wasn't working out very well. He was too far away. It was all pastured pork, large black hogs. So we just sort of scaled back, and we're just doing Highland beef and that sort of thing. We're not actively trying to get into other things.
Now, you mentioned earlier that you're at retirement age. Did you and your wife, or do you retire from an off-the-farm career? Or is that something still going on?
Yeah, I was in the energy business for most of my career.
Okay.
And, so when we bought the farm and everything, we wanted to make it active. My grandparents had been leasing it all out, and so that's when we started working with this career center. And so we took part of it way back then, but then over time, as our operation expanded and we wanted to get more into totally grass-fed and grass-finished and be in control of our own destiny, we took it all back, and so it's all in hay and pasture. Back to my career, I was in the energy business and busy, and then in the early 2000s, when this started taking off and everything, we were able to work it in, and now effectively I'm not doing any outside work like that anymore. But it's just
this is probably
farming yeah.
Very good. Well, if there's somebody out there that's listening and they're interested in raising Highland cattle, but they don't know all the different ins and outs of working with this particular breed, is there a resource or somewhere where you would send them to learn more?
Well, there's a lot of information on the American Highland Cattle Association website, and then there's also a resource on there for the breeders, and you can click on that, and a map pops up for the U.S., and then you can find farms in your local area. And if you're interested in primarily the beef side of it, people that are actively beef sellers, I mean, most people are going to sell beef even if they're doing breeding stock. They're going to probably get rid of a few sides, but those that are more active would have a stake icon on their listing on the website, and you could contact those people that are close to you and probably see them. Because I'm on some of the beef marketing type committees, and my name pops up. We get calls from people all over the country, and people can email me and stuff.
Okay.
And I can help direct them to people closer to them also. But, and then in the Midwest, we have a Midwest Highland Cattle Association, and I'm the past president. And this association's got some good resources. And you don't have to be a member to access a lot of the resources either on our website, the Midwest Highland Cattle Association site, or the American Highland Cattle Association site. The non-members can easily get to some of that stuff.
Okay. Well, this is great, John. If somebody out there listening, if they would like to contact you, they've got questions for you that I did not ask, how would you like them to go about doing that?
They can send an email to highlandbeef@gmail.com.
Awesome. Okay. Well, I will link up to that and to your great website on our show notes for this episode. And thank you so much for coming on and sharing this with us. I liked getting to hear about your business and about the Highland cattle.
Well, thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining us today, everybody. I hope you enjoyed that interview with John McLaughlin. And, as always, enjoy your journey to the ultimate lifestyle business, agriculture.